Superheroes have and still do play a major role in the media today. From movies to TV shows and comic books and more, these larger-than-life characters have influenced us all in one way or another, helping us escape the world and taking us through wild adventures to relating to us in personal situations. These characters can even shape who we become. These are the heroes that made me. I loved animals growing up. At one point in my life, when I was around 9 or 10, we had 7 cats, a hamster, and a mouse all in one household. My favorite movies growing up always had animals as the main characters as well. Being able to transform and see the world through the eyes of these creatures had always been a dream of mine. Teen Titans was the first show I saw related to superheroes, and the one who always stood out to me was Beast Boy. Beast Boy was everything I ever wanted in a character. He was one of my favorite colors and could turn into animals. That was pretty much the extent of it. Not really that hard to impress a kid, but regardless, he was one of the most powerful characters I'd seen at the time, being the first character to inspire me to create my own superheroes and characters. Beast Boy was the one who started it all for me. He held my hand through this comic book world, introducing me to these crazy and interesting characters. Characters that would eventually get me through life, help me through my problems, and even grow up with. Thanks to that, Beast Boy will always be my favorite superhero. American Dragon Jake Long will always be one of my favorite television shows. This underrated cartoon with its fun animation and immersive universe gave birth to my love of the supernatural world and its creatures. We live in a society where, we live in a world where every once in a while, we'll get something where dragons aren't the antagonists or being hunted down in video games. So it's fun and refreshing seeing them depicted as these guardians over the magical world, rather than being monsters you have to kill just because they're in your way or you have to get something from them. Jake Long is the American Dragon, a 13-year-old skateboarder who's tasked to protect the magical world that lives beneath New York City. This show will always hold the top spot in being the most relatable TV show I've ever seen. From the language and the slang that the main character uses to the friendships and heartbreak. Besides all the magical elements, everything Jake Long's going through, I was experiencing the same situations alongside the show. Going through loss, the challenges of being a teenager, and living up to expectations. It's a fact that this show is way ahead of its time. Also, as of this recording, this show is not on Disney Plus yet, so I'm gonna need someone to fix that.
Hey, I did it! Check me out! I'm the American Dragon!
Earlier I said that turning into different creatures and experiencing the world in their eyes was something I always dreamed of. But once I was introduced to Ben 10, this show multiplied my love for that power by, 10. I was never interested in alien life before I watched this show. I wasn't even really interested in superheroes at the time. This show was introduced to me on accident. My grandfather had come over to cut my hair, and while he was doing so, the television in the living room was set to Cartoon Network, which had a Ben 10 marathon running. I didn't think twice about the show. I mean, I knew of it, but not enough to actually care about anything. Maybe it was the theme song or the characters, or it could have been the fact that I couldn't reach for the TV remote. But I immediately fell in love with this show, and basically grew up with it. As the main characters aged and learned, I did the same. It even kicked off my desire to draw, as I'd always sketch the characters just to see if I could. I wasn't into comics or anything related to the subject until this franchise sparked the fuel for my eventual love for writing and superheroes. And whenever that fateful question came up, if you had any superpowers at all, what would they be? I'd always go with the Omnitrix, or Ultimatrix, some version of an Omnitrizy.
Who knew he could do that?
Who knew the plural of Omnitrix was Omnitrices?
Iron Man will always hold a special place in my heart. After my mother passed, my father came over to live with me and my sister for a while. I knew my father and I knew he cared about me, but we never were the type to go outside and play catch or anything. One day he brought home Iron Man 2, and we watched it together. Not only was it one of the first times me and my father bonded, but it was also my first introduction to the MCU. I was aware of the Marvel movies, but at the time, I had no idea that they were all connecting to a greater storyline that would eventually inspire me to write my own stories. Now, Beast Boy was my first favorite DC character, but the Flash was the one who properly introduced me to the DC universe. Grant Gustin's Flash, to be specific. Going into the show, I knew nothing about the character, besides the obvious super speed. This show got me through high school and even made me break out of my shell. I began to make friends with other kids who also enjoyed the show. One of them who would eventually become my best friend. Thanks to this show, not only did it introduce me to a cool character, but it also held my hand into the DC universe. It also made me realize that you can like more than one comic book company. It's not about who's better, it's about the stories that they tell. This show also ignited my love for time travel in movies and TV shows. And even though he's the paragon of love, the character of the Flash taught me about change, moving on, being hopeful, teaching me to run towards my goals and what I believe in while using my past as a learning experience.
Do this now. Run. Barry, run!
So those were the heroes that made me. If you want, feel free in the comments below to tell me which heroes made you. Thanks for watching. Leave a like if you want, and I'll see you when I see you. Is it bad that I knew Krypto the Superdog before I knew anything about Superman? Maybe, I guess.